Hello everyone. Today's lecture is very dense, so you should have your day 4 assignment out. It is titled Only Daughter by Sandra Cisneros, and you should be looking at activity 1. This is the guided notes activity for the lecture that I'm about to give right now on literary devices. So what are literary devices? Literary devices refer to the typical structures used by writers in their works to convey their messages in a simple manner to their readers. When employed properly, the different literary devices help readers appreciate and interpret and analyze literary works. So there are two different kinds of literary devices: literary elements and literary techniques. Literary elements have to do with plot and setting and narrative and structures and characters and moods and themes. And literary techniques have to do with actual strategies that the writer uses, like metaphors, similes, alliteration, allusion, hyperbole, allegory, etc. So today's lecture is focused on literary techniques as opposed to literary elements. And just so you know, all the definitions will be in black, and all the examples will be in red. So first, let's look at alliteration, which is defined as the repetition of initial consonant sounds. In this first example, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, the repetition occurs at the beginning of each word. It's that P sound that repeats throughout the phrase. In the next example, look at the luscious lemon, it's an L sound that is repeated at the beginning of each word in this phrase. An allusion is a reference to something we all know, and this is included in a literary work to add meaning to it. If you refer to another literary work, it enhances the meaning of your own. So here's an example of an allusion. It was a Titanic storm. Everybody knows that the Titanic was an unmitigated disaster. Hundreds of people died. So in alluding to the Titanic, the storm sounds much, much more grave and serious. Here's another example. He's as smart as Billy Weaver. Those of you who read the short story The Landlady with me last year might understand this allusion, because Billy Weaver is a character who is very stupid. So in alluding to Billy Weaver, this author has now drawn a direct comparison illustrating how stupid their character is. Next, let's look at hyperbole. Hyperbole is the purposeful exaggeration for emphasis or humor. So hyperbole is when you intentionally exaggerate to make a point, often a humorous point. After eating hundreds of Christmas cookies, Sally felt like she weighed a ton. This is a hyperbolic sentence. Obviously, Sally doesn't weigh over 2,000 pounds, but she feels very heavy after eating so much at Christmas time. Up next is idiom. An idiom is a phrase that means something to us because we speak this language, but it doesn't mean anything literally. Here are some examples of idioms. Needle in a haystack, hit the sack, raining cats and dogs. None of these phrases make any literal sense, but they are all so commonly used in the United States that we understand them anyway. Next, I want to talk about imagery. So imagery has to do with extremely descriptive language. This is when you start talking about the five senses: smell, taste, touch, hearing, and sight. So here is an excerpt that is full of imagery. The very first time I saw her, it was the back of the head I saw, and there was something lovely about it. The angles of it, like a shiny, hard corn kernel or a riverbed fossil. She had what the Victorians would call a finely shaped head. You could imagine the skull quite easily. I'd know her head anywhere, and what's inside it. I think of that too, her mind, her brain, all those coils, and her thoughts shuttling through those coils like fast, frantic centipedes. Like a child, I picture opening her skull, unspooling her brain and sifting through it, trying to catch and pin down her thoughts. So this is a very creepy excerpt, and that creepiness is accomplished by the imagery that this author employs. He compares her skull to a shiny hard corn kernel or a riverbed fossil. And then he talks about how thoughts are like frantic centipedes. All of these creepy images add up to create this really descriptive excerpt. Up next is dramatic irony. Dramatic irony occurs when we know something that the character doesn't know. So in a murder movie, when you're yelling at the character, "No, don't go in the kitchen," because you know the killers are in the kitchen, that is dramatic irony. You know something that that character doesn't. This is compared to situational irony, where you expect something to happen and then the exact opposite happens. So this is when the firehouse burns down. Alanis Morissette wrote an entire song about situational irony. So the line, "It's like rain on your wedding day," is situationally ironic because you expect your wedding day to be perfect, and rain is the exact opposite of a perfect wedding day. The last instance of irony that I want to look at is verbal irony. This is when what is said is the opposite of what is meant. So going back to that classic Roald Dahl short story, The Landlady, when she says, "I'm going to take good care of you," to Billy Weaver, we know what that means because she's such an evil character. We know that she actually is going to do the opposite of that. She's going to take very bad care of Billy Weaver. Here's another example of verbal irony. "Hi, my name is Tiny," says the biggest guy ever. Up next, I want to look at metaphor. So metaphor is when you compare two objects without using the words like or as. So it's a direct comparison of two unlike things without using the words like or as. Her fingers were spidery legs dancing across the keyboard. So her fingers are being compared to spider legs, but they are being compared to spider legs without using the words like or as. So that's a metaphor. Up next is onomatopoeia. An onomatopoeia is the formation of a word from a sound associated with what is named. Some examples of onomatopoeia are bang, buzz, sizzle, plop. Let's take a look at a commercial that features onomatopoeia.
You worked too hard, you ate too much, the cheesecake made you greedy. Let your aching head and stomach hear this message from old Speedy. Alka-Seltzer, plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. Those Speedy bubbles relieve your upset stomach and headache fast. For acid indigestion alone, Alka-Seltzer Gold. Oh, what a relief it is. What a relief.
Up next is personification. Personification occurs when you give non-living things human traits, when you give non-living things human attributes. The flowers danced in the breeze is an excellent example of personification because flowers don't literally dance, but by personifying the flowers with human attributes, by giving them the ability to dance, the image of these flowers in the breeze comes alive. Up next is repetition. Throughout his poem, The Raven, Edgar Allan Poe repeats certain words at different intervals, and he keeps doing so to create this sort of residual resounding effect that heightens the creepiness of that poem. So you might want to think about including repetition of certain key words in your personal narrative or some of your descriptive writing. When you compare two objects using like or as, that is called a simile. An example of a simile would be her brain was like a supercomputer. In this example, a brain is being compared to a computer using the word like. So symbols are persons, places, or things that represent something else or stand for something else. The most classic example of a symbol would be the American flag, right? It represents freedom, hot dogs, 4th of July, independence. The rose, another classic symbol. It represents love, beauty, romance. So these are the literary devices that I want you to be focusing on in your reading of personal narratives. And I also want you to start trying to incorporate some of the literary devices that I've covered today in your own descriptive writing and your own personal narrative writing. All right, have a lovely day.